it's our honor at the moment. We welcomed Vicki Tompkins to this area after 9/11. She moved to Texas, and we didn't quite realize what a special person she was. We got to know her and learned more and more about what she did in New York. And Vicki is here tonight and is going to share some life-changing experiences. And through that experience and what she's been doing since then, Vicki did a great deal of good up there. But this type of thing helps us understand what that experience was about and how it can shape us to be stronger now. Vicki Tompkins was a New York Police Department detective in New York City on 9/11. And she will now come on up and share her thoughts and memories.
Hi, everybody. This is always a tough day for me, so please bear with me. Before I talk about what I did down there, I did a little research today, and I had forgotten about something. And I did, if you notice everything up in front here, this is all stuff that I brought from home. This is stuff that I have. These are the most fabulous, wonderful letters from children that wrote to us and kept us going when we were in the Red Cross centers getting some relief. They're from all over the United States. There's one from San Antonio, there's some from Tennessee, Kentucky, Michigan. But these children now, 13 years later, are teenagers and adults. So it's interesting when I look back on what they were thinking and how they felt. My hard hat from Ground Zero. That little thing right there is a piece of the World Trade Center. That is the only thing I took from Ground Zero. Actually, I took 2 or 3 pieces, but they're in churches right now and sitting on a judge's desk in El Paso. So the newspapers I collected were minus September 12th. I was not home to get that paper. The rest of them I had my friends collect for me, and it's a 30-day calculation of the first 30 days after 9/11. The gear over here is what we were issued post 9/11. Gas masks, hazmat suits with its own duct tape, reflective vest, cuffs, and a bunch of other stuff. So when we're done, feel free to browse, look, read, and the book. The white book up there, it's open to somewhere in the middle, is everybody that was perished on 9/11 and those that perished due to the effects of 9/11 up to last year. So there's more than the original 2,900 people. There's over, today, over 3,100 New York City police officers and law enforcement personnel have perished post 9/11 due to the effects of what they inhaled down there. I have been so blessed. Every year I have to fly to New York and get tested and make sure I'm still okay. So somebody's looking out for me. What research I did, and I'm just gonna, real quick, Asia Cotton, Rodney Dickens, Bernard Brown II, Zoe Falkenberg, Dana Falkenberg, Juliana McCourt, David Gamboa Brandhaust, and Christine Hansen. Anybody know who these people are, other than the fact that they perished on 9/11? These were the children. 11, 11, 11, all winners of a science project that they were going to share. So they were all on a plane from schools. 8, 3, 4, 3, and the youngest, 2. These 8 children were all on the planes that perished. from the Pentagon and one from the World Trade Center. I had not even realized, everybody talks about their family members, and I had not realized that there were 8 children that perished in the planes that day. So, another little thing, Mark, I really appreciated your words today. They were really, really nice and very heartfelt, and I really appreciated them. However, there was a prior terror attack at the World Trade Center on February 26th, 1993. And that was a failed attempt. And that's where they figured that they couldn't explode the trade centers from below. They had to do it from above. Luke and I talked about this before, and I will tell everybody that I don't care what anybody says, those towers did their job. They didn't explode. They imploded. So the catastrophe that was 9/11, as horrible as it was, would have been a whole lot worse if those towers had exploded instead of coming straight down. It was also primary day in New York City. And at any given day, and I have the stats for that, at any given day, 50,000 people worked in the trade center, in the buildings there. On any given day, over 200,000 people passed through the doors of the World Trade Center as visitors, as clients, as for whatever reason. It's an easy way to cut through to get to somewhere else that you were going. My uncle worked in the towers when they were first built back in 1975. He worked for a company called Western Electric. And I remember visiting him there at the big globe that stood in the middle. And he was amazed that they built these things. And he said, oh, but the cost was so much. It cost $400 million to build those buildings. Can't imagine what it would cost today. It was so big, the 16-acre property, that it had its own zip code, 10048. And if anybody knows, 16 acres of land went from downtown Manhattan all the way up the West Side Highway and over to Broadway. The churches where we stayed, Trinity Church sustained a little bit of damage, and not much, for its location was right in the heart of where the towers came down, and St. Paul's Church, which is where we stayed. Interesting note about St. Paul's Church is that George Washington used that church when he was in New York. There's a pew that was set up just for him, where he stayed. St. Paul's Church was where we could rest, we could get nourishment, we could get sleep. You'd see at any given time 30 or 40 firemen and police officers, steel workers and iron workers sleeping for an hour or two, whatever they could get. And it was also the church where along all the Iron Gate, all the way down the block, was covered in these letters and words of encouragement for us, and red, white, and blue ribbons, and it was fabulous. It was just such a great place to go. You could heal your soul, and you could heal your heart, and you could go back and do what you had to do. So, on 9/11, I was assigned to Brooklyn North Narcotics, and which is one of the messiest jobs in the world. It was a gorgeous day, but I wasn't going to work. I was going to training in the Bronx, disorder control training, because we were going to be sent to Washington for the World Economic Forum because of all the problems that they had up in Seattle, Washington. So I'm thinking, this is going to be a great day. This is going to be easy, and it'll be fun. And I won't be getting dirty and catching bad guys and getting hurt and running after people. All those wonderful things that now I look back and I miss. So, my daughter screams and yells, and she's watching TV, and I'm thinking, what is she screaming about now? So she's saying, oh my God, oh my gosh, the Trade Center just got hit. And I said, what? And I'm thinking, what are you watching? A sci-fi movie or a documentary or War of the World? It's 8 o'clock in the morning, please. You know, and I'm thinking, And then all of a sudden, she says, turn on the TV, turn on the TV. So we turn the TV on, and sure enough, the Trade Center's on fire. And I'm going, this is not good. And I'm thinking, training's canceled. Okay, call your command, call your command, call your command. Couldn't get through to my command for about 20 minutes. So, and then the next plane hit, and I'm going, this is even worse. We're under attack. Who would do this? And then I'm thinking, no, it's not the Russians, it's not the Koreans. Who would do this? And they were saying that they had video footage and this and that. So I just jump in my car, pack a bag, kiss my daughter, kiss my grandson, and say, I'll call you if I can. Of course, you can't call because there's no phone service down there anymore. I get to my command. Now, if you've ever been to New York, I lived on Long Island. Okay, I worked in Brooklyn, lived on Long Island, and this happens in Manhattan. So I go from my house, it's a 20-minute ride at 70 miles an hour to my command. Traffic was ridiculous. It was literally a parkway. You were going nowhere unless you were emergency service. I hooked up with these guys from Nassau County and followed their emergency trucks all the way down to the Queens border, where I had to show them my ID card. Didn't matter if you were in a uniform, you had to have your ID card. So got through that, got to my command. The first wave of detectives and cops from narcotics had gone already. They probably lived real close. And the second wave, which was myself, my boss, my team, and about 50 or 60 other detectives and cops from narcotics, we were assigned the second wave going into the city. We were waiting for cars, we were waiting for them to get gassed up, waiting for a whole bunch of things. And the smoke, all the way in Brooklyn from Manhattan, was already coming over. We all had on just uniform shirts. Like what I'm wearing today is basically what I wore down there for about 3 weeks, because we didn't have time to go shopping for new clothes. Our uniforms were history after day one. So, jeans, gun belts, and hard hats, which, yeah, that's what's left of that one. It's pretty messed up. So we get down there, and the first thing I notice is that you can't see. You hit one spot and it was daylight, and then all of a sudden, it was gray. It was so dense. It was like the worst fog you can imagine. You can't see anything in front of you. Didn't matter that they had the high beam lights on, and they had, what do you call the construction lights that they bring in when they're doing nighttime construction. They tried to light it up, but there was such a dense smoke in the air, which was, it was steel, it was windows, it was concrete, paper, and human remains. So you stepped out of the van and you were literally coated. I know you've all seen the infamous pictures of the woman walking in Manhattan, and she's just covered. And that's what it was like. And it was so fine and so smooth and gritty that it didn't matter. We had paper masks. Paper masks, might as well not have been wearing anything. It went right through. And this is a lot of what made so many people sick, was inhaling the carcinogens and things from ground zero on the first couple of days that we were down there. Because we had no idea what it was that we were up against. Mark, once again, we need to take care of all these people that are now sick, whether it's our soldiers or our cops and firemen that spent so much time. And we had crews from Texas, we had crews from Alaska, we had crews from all over the United States helping us. And they all wore their own uniforms. And it was just the most beautiful sight to see, them coming in with their lights and sirens to help. And on the side of the road, where we'd have to park every day when we came in, we'd walk down the street, and one of the greatest feelings I ever had, and I never ever thought I'd see this in New York, was walking down the West Side Highway and people were cheering for us. That was the most amazing feeling. A cop in New York City does not get cheered, okay? It's just not happening. Firefighters get cheered. So, but it was, and everybody was like handing us water, you know, make sure you stay hydrated, you know, make sure you're doing great. And I don't care what anybody says, I will always support McDonald's. They opened up for us that night and fed all those workers from day one. And for free. They just said, whatever you all need. They were calling in from all over New York for workers to come in so they could feed the first responders. So, go McDonald's. My most telling point was we were assigned to clear buildings because you couldn't go near Ground Zero. It was burning. It burned for like 104 days. It burned into December before it was burning underneath. And boots, everything, if you had rubber, anything rubber on, it was gone. In a matter of days, you couldn't wear the same thing. Red Cross, thankfully, people donated boots from all kinds of all kinds of Timberline and all kinds of places donated boots for us to wear. It was hot. It was really, really hot. I remember we were assigned to clear Building 7, the World Trade Center. Go in there and it's just dark, and flashlights, beams, didn't matter. We carried buckets, we carried water, flashlights, and of course our hard hats. The most telling thing about it was eerie. It was so quiet. Nobody wanted to say anything. What do you say? We were looking for survivors. It was tedious. It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking because you knew deep down you weren't going to find anybody. What we did find were their remains. And usually not the whole person. So, shirts, pocketbooks, everything was collected. Everything. We found a lot of jewelry, a lot of money, a lot of pocketbooks and wallets, ID cards. It was so telling to not be able to do what I was trained to do. It was, you want to talk about rage? That didn't quite cover it. I was so mad and so horrified at the same time, and didn't have time to really think about it. You couldn't. You had a job to do. Your job was rescue at that point. Day one was rescue. It was rescue up until you were told it wasn't. And then it was recovery. Recovery was even harder because it meant you had to give up the hope you were going to find people alive down there. What was very telling also were the doctors and the nurses and the paramedics and EMTs that stood around with nothing to do. You look on their faces and you knew they were losing hope. I mean, they were treating us, broken arms and legs from falling, and cuts and bruises and eye wash and that, but you knew they just stood around in the triage area, and you just looked on their faces, and they felt like we did. I'm a highly trained detective, and I'm feeling so inadequate. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm looking. I'm pretty good at finding stuff. I'm not feeling real good right about now. And this went on for about 36 hours. The first night we got down, we stayed for about 36 hours or so. And then we were finally sent back to command, and nobody wanted to leave. I'll sleep right here. I'll stay here. I'm not even going to fill out overtime. I'm staying until it's done. Because that's a little bit unrealistic. I finally got back home about 3-4 days later, and I noticed that what they told us when we got back there: do not take off your clothes in your house. So it was garbage bags and outside in the garage. Package everything up and throw it in the garbage. So that's what we did. And then I noticed, jumped in the shower and it never felt so good. The problem was, it wasn't coming out of my hair. And it was like caked, and it was cutting my scalp. It was the dirt and the grit and glass that was so fine. I literally had to go to a hairdresser, and they had to cut my hair and do it in sections to get the grit out. So, hence, my long hair is no longer. And that is one of the things that I carry with me, because I used to like my long hair. But other than that, we worked. We didn't stop. And then it was after the 36 hours, when we had time off, went home, and literally just fell out for about 24 hours. Didn't even wake up. We were assigned 12-hour shifts after that. And on your own time, if you wanted, you could stay down there, hook up with a team, and do some more. And then once they started removing piles of pieces of the towers and that from Ground Zero, it was taken to the Staten Island landfill, which is about as depressing a place as you're ever going to see. It is just desolate. It almost looks like the moon. It did. And they would take these long trucks, and they would truck the big pieces of the trade center up there, and then the dump trucks would come in, and they would cart away the smaller things. And they was just laid out all over Staten Island landfill. And then from there, we were either assigned to Ground Zero for a variety of jobs, or you were assigned to the landfill, which was, let me go here real quick. You don one of these every day. This is an ugly piece of fashion for you. Comes with some duct tape too. And you put it on, and you duct tape it around you, and then you put on those yellow little booties and duct tape those around you, because you didn't know what was up there. And the second day I was up there with our buckets and our little trowels and that, we painstakingly went through everything until they got the conveyor belt set up, and then they would shovel stuff onto there, and you could go through it like that. My most heartbreaking moment at the landfill was finding the T-shirt, torn, ripped, and burned. It said NYPD on it. Now, a little bit about that. I lost a lot of friends that day. And two of them that I always tell you about is Joey Vigiano, who was probably the most decorated police officer in NYPD history. Shot 3 times, came back, was emergency service worker, which is like SWAT. Only our guys are cooler. They get to play with all the good toys. And Joey wasn't afraid of anything. He loved being a cop. But you could only be a cop if you were in emergency service unless you were a boss. Couldn't be a detective. So, First Deputy Commissioner Joe Dunn, who was our boss in the 7-5 when I was a patrol cop, said to Joe, what do you want to do on the job? Don't you want to, I want to be an ESU. He says, but I want to be a detective. So you can't be a detective and work in emergency service. He says, why not? He says, well, I don't know. It's just not done. Who am I to change things? And Joe, well, you're the first dep. Do it. And he did. He became the first detective in ESU. Joe had so many commendations that they just handed him a piece of paper. He didn't have a shirt big enough to put his medals on. He perished on 9/11, leaving behind a wife and 4 children, one of whom is now in the United States Navy, I believe, and his other one is a cop. So, his brother John was the firefighter that died in 9/11. So we had the cop and the firefighter. And a lot of times when they depicted the Twin Towers, they had a picture of John and a picture of Joe. And they called these, America's new heroes. But Joe just loved his job, loved being a cop, loved his wife, loved his family. His mom and dad are fabulous people. I met so many fabulous, wonderful families under the most extraordinary circumstances, heartbreaking circumstances. And I am amazed and thankful that people are so strong and so resilient. And that's what I love about this country. I gotta tell you, I was always a flag wave from before. I'm a Navy veteran. And let me tell you, after 9/11, I was already doing what everybody else decided to do. So it was just nice to see somebody else appreciate this country as much as I did. Another reason I moved to Texas. So I used to say I got here as fast as I could. And now I just say, listen, I was born a New Yorker, but I chose to be a Texan. So, and Julie can tell you, and Luke will tell you, I don't do well talking about this. It's tough, even 13 years later. It brings back so many good and not so good memories. Met my judge friend Sue at Ground Zero, and she was my second taste of Texas. My first visit to Texas was on her invitation, where I spoke at El Paso Independent School District luncheon that November. And kind of weird. I'm a person that would rather stay in the background. I loved my job. I loved being a cop. I did. Loved it. Still love it. And loved what I got to do. 9/11 was so different in that I loved helping people, and I love being the one that can figure things out. I love to try to figure things out. This was way beyond my pay grade. I sit there now, 13 years later, and I look and I go, I can't even, still to this day, make sense out of what happened that day, except that I still get so angry at what happened. Now, I never saw the clip. I was busy that day, and the days following. But in one of the magazines, or one of the papers that I brought, they talk about that speech, and they asked New Yorkers what they thought about the president's speech. Having never seen it, I didn't know what to think, but these are New Yorkers we're talking about. He got 19% of the vote. They loved his speech. They thought he was presidential. They thought he spoke from the heart. There wasn't a bad comment about it. I love this country so much, and that day really brought a lot of things into focus for me. I think I want what I had for my daughter and my grandkids and my great-grandkids, hopefully someday. I see myself up in the landfill looking around, and I think, oh my goodness, there's so many people that just won't get that. Their children are gone. Their families are broken. I was president of the New York State Shields, and my job as president was dealing with the families of police officers and members of law enforcement that lost someone in the line of duty. It is probably the toughest job I've ever had, but I learned from dealing with those families. They gave me so much strength, because you have no idea how strong these people are. They are just mothers that have just been brought to their knees, and they pick themselves up and say, you know what? I am going to help the next person that this happens to, that it shouldn't happen to, but it will. And unfortunately, after 9/11, we held a memorial service where over 1,100 people showed up from Texas. A whole family of 18 came all the way to New York just to see their brother, their cousin, their father, their son get honored that day. And there's a place here in San Antonio called Alamo Gold and Steel, Alamo Gold and Silver. They made necklaces for every single family on their own dime. Came up to New York, and we allowed them to present this small token to each family of their member's shield number from the department that they came from. So that was wonderful. And we presented them with a medal as well, our Medal of Valor, which was named after Stephen Driscoll, another emergency worker that died on 9/11, who was born on the 4th of July. So go figure. Stevie was a wonderful guy, so full of life. He's the guy that would, if he saw your flag was all messed up, he would make you fix it. And if you couldn't do it, he would fix it for you. That's the kind of guy he was. I have great memories of that. Sergeant Mikey Curtin, one of my heroes, another one of my heroes, was in Oklahoma during the Oklahoma bombing. He is a Marine Corps reservist, and he spent years and years in the Marine Corps before becoming a reservist and joining the NYPD. Sergeant Curtin was the Marine that was down at the Oklahoma City bombing site and refused to let them take that Marine out of that building until they brought an honor guard to remove him. So it tells you a little bit about his character. We worked together, we all worked together, me, Joe, Mike. We all worked together in the 75th Precinct in East New York when I came on the job. Joey was already bigger than life. Mikey and I graduated together. Great memories. But I hope, my hope is that we've learned something from this. And it's so easy to forget. 10 years go by, 11 years go by, 12 years go by. Some people don't even know about what happened that day. And that's sad. I mean, to me, it was a life-changing event, I know, for my daughter, who didn't know if her mom was coming home. It was tough. And now, I look at things differently. It made me harder. I don't always look at people the same. I'm the type of person now that'll just look at you, and I'll be looking at you, and I'll be looking for bulges, I'll be looking for all kinds of different things. And where I probably wouldn't have said anything before, I will say something now. Because if you see something, say something. What's it gonna take, a few minutes out of your day? You may be the one that stops another attack. Now, I'm not saying, send up, hook up speakers to the neighbors' yards and stuff, but if it doesn't look right, those little hairs in the back of your neck, they work. They work real well. They do. I attended so many funerals, so much heartbreak. The only songs that I seem to remember that make me cry still to this day is Alan Jackson's "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning?" Because I heard that song and I went, God, what is he inside my head? Everything that he said in that song was everything that I felt. I love cop shows and dramas. I watched I Love Lucy. I watched Andy Griffith. Anything to try to make me laugh, because I couldn't cry. I couldn't. I didn't have time to cry. I didn't have time for anything except the job at hand, which was seeing if we could bring some closure to some of these families. Some sort of anything that we could say, here you go. To this day, they're still testing DNA at the hospitals down in Bellevue with the morgue. So I realize that our troops are the greatest in the world. I will do anything for them. But your first responders here at home, your cops, your firemen, your paramedics, say thank you to them too. Because if it ever hits the fan out here, and I think it will, unfortunately, that border is going to explode. Say thank you. Because they don't get it that often. And that's all they really want to hear. And after 9/11, we found out what thank you really meant, And so when I go places and I speak, and I tell everybody, we heard you saying thank you to us with the cards and the letters and the water that you gave us, or just standing on the side saying thank you, or clapping, or whatever. We heard you. And we took that and did our job. That's why we could do our job. It was a thankless job. But because of you guys and people all across this phenomenal country, we could do what we had to do to help this country heal. So, on that note, before I start on, thanks everybody. If y'all have questions, please feel free to ask me, because this is the only time I talk about this. You don't get me to talk about it any other time. But I hope I've cleared a few things up for you, but if you have other questions, please ask. And help yourself to look at what I brought for you all to see. So thank you very much.
After that, we were all New Yorkers.
That's very true.
We really were.
Yeah.
And now it's been 13 years. I didn't have children back then. It's Vicky's presentation on this. She's done it several times, and it's always so heartrending to think about what that was like for the people who were there.